All right, friends, we are back. Today we're going to talk about wrist angles and the golf club, golf swing, how that all affects the shots you're hitting out on the course or in the simulator, wherever you're hitting your golf shots. So let's not waste any time. Your wrist can do three basic things inside the swing. They can hinge up and down. That's radial and ulnar deviation, okay? They can turn or spin or rotate, right? So this would be supination of both hands. That's pronation. I always remember it because if you were holding a bowl of soup, you put your palms up like that. That's supination, palm down, pronation. Lastly, we can flex and extend these wrists, right? So that's extending my wrists, and then like a forearm curl in the gym would be flexion, okay? Now, let's talk about how they all fit into the swing, and I try not to think about things through good versus bad. I'm always trying to look at things through cause and effect. So, let's start with the radial and the ulnar, right? We want to hinge up and down in the golf swing. This is a good source of power, right? We want to be able to go radial with these wrists, hinge up in the backswing, and then there's going to be a component to us kind of releasing down on that ball. Not a ton, but it's a form of the power that you're delivering. It's kind of like a little bit of casting a fishing rod out there, right? That up and downward motion helps put more force into the ball. Okay, now, the other two are going to have huge implications on how your club face opens, closes, or doesn't throughout the swing. Okay, so a very common mistake we see in takeaways is a lot of pronation, supination that tends to roll the face open. So a tip I'm giving to golfers all the time would be if you are slicing the ball, rolling the face too open, you want to feel more flexion, extension of these wrists. So the left lead wrist would flex back, the trail wrist would extend back. And what that lets us do is it lets us create like a hinge motion to our swing while still keeping this face square to close, right? So there's some decision making to be had whether you want to try and work more flexion extension into the early backswing takeaway so you can build power without opening the face, or it all depends on what your miss pattern is. If you miss with a closed face, then there are certain times where I'm going to have golfers increase that pronation, supination to get that toe kind of more up in the air. As a general rule of thumb, I never wanted to see the toe back in the backswing. That's a lot of opening, and that's hard to come back from. We almost never see good shots happening with that much rotating the face open in the backswing, okay? So, pros and cons to everything. When I get a lot of flexion extension, what that does is it creates a lot of forward shaft, which again, could be a good or bad thing depending on what we're working on, right? So, people with a lot of flexion and extension in these wrists, they can struggle to hit the ball high enough. Sometimes they hit it too low, or if you're hitting it too high, it could be a good thing. Try and de-lock the club and stuff like that. All right, so the last piece I have here is, what we look like at the top of the backswing with like that extended left wrist or flex left wrist. Sometimes people kind of pay attention to the trail wrist being extended. We call that like a waiter's hold. So it's all dependent on your perspective there, but that's just going to be opening versus closing the face, right? So technically, we usually see with both left wrists, that's going to increase how much it would be closed at the top versus if I extend that left wrist, we can see how the face is going to be more open there. And that really should pair up with your lead hand grip. So a lot of great golfers we see with some cupping or extension, I should mention that, right? Golf terminology, sometimes we call that a bowed wrist versus a cupped wrist. It's flexion extension, interchangeable terms. But if I have a really weak left hand, we see a lot of tour players with a weak left hand and that bowed wrist, and that helps them keep the face more square. And a lot of the great players we see with a cupped left wrist at the top, they tend to have a stronger grip orientation, which if you just watch me go from weaker to stronger, you can see the cupping get created or the extension start there. Okay, so you can hinge up and down, radial ulnar. You can supinate, pronate, which is going to open and close the face. You can go extended flex with the wrist, which is going to mainly mess with shaft lean. But as we mentioned, it can also be a hinging or setting motion that all golfers need for power in the backswing. So some golfers would probably benefit from going more flex and extended to hinge versus supinated, pronated, which again is going to hold the face more closed and open. I'll stop rambling now, but that's kind of a little spiel about how the wrists work with the club through the swing. Any questions, leave them in the comments. If you enjoy the content, do me a huge favor, subscribe to the channel, press that thumbs up button. I'll see you next time.